Kristin Gaspar.
Well, good morning. It's an honor to be in your presence, and I'm just so thankful that this opportunity exists in my hometown, the city of Encinitas. So thank you to our Legion Post for bringing this event forward each and every year. Well, as you heard of today, the first official National Decoration Day that took place 150 years ago was in Washington, D.C. at Arlington Cemetery. James Garfield's speech on that day has a resonance that still has meaning a century and a half later. Garfield, of course, went on to be our 20th President of the United States. Today, I thought it would be appropriate to share with you some of the words that James Garfield spoke at Arlington Cemetery on May 30th, 1868. I am oppressed with a sense of impropriety of uttering words on this occasion. If silence is ever golden, it must be here, beside the graves of 15,000 men whose lives were more significant than speech and whose death was a poem, the music of which can never be sung. With words we make promises, plight faith, praise virtue, but promises may not be kept. Plighted faith may be broken, and vaunted virtue be only the cunning mask of vice. We do not know one promise these men made, one pledge they gave, one word they spoke. But we do know that they summed up and perfected by one supreme act the highest virtue of men and citizens. For love of country they accepted death, and thus resolved all doubts, and made immortal their patriotism and their virtue. For the noblest man that lives, there still remains a conflict. He must still withstand the assaults of time and fortune, must still be assailed with temptation before which lofty natures have fallen. But with these, the conflict ended. The victory was won when death stamped on them the great seal of heroic character and closed a record which years can never consider. The silent assembly of the dead. What does it represent? Nay, rather, what does it not represent? It is the epitome of war. If each grave had a voice to tell us what its silent tenant last saw and heard on earth, we might stand with uncovered heads and hear the whole story of the war. The voices of these dead will forever fill the land like holy benedictions. What other spot so fitting for their last resting place as this, under the shadow of the Capitol, saved by their valor? Here, where the grim edge of the battle joined, here where the hope and the fear and the agony of their country centered. Here let them rest, asleep on the nation's heart, entombed in the nation's love. Thank you.
Supervisor Kristin Gaspar. Next, I would like to welcome to the podium fellow Legionnaire, retired USMC Colonel and current Assemblyman, Rocky Chavez.
Got to do this so you can see me. You know, I look out across the group here, and what strikes me very well is all the young people. I love seeing the scouts here and the people that took the time to bring the children here, because Memorial Day, and we've heard about it earlier speaking, that we recognize those who have died for our country. And you think about it, 1 million of them have passed. Yesterday, I had the honor to be at Miramar Cemetery, and we were listening to the Coast Guard captain give a speech, and I must tell you, it's one of the best speeches I've ever heard at Memorial Day. And this is a Marine talking about a Coast Guard guy, so. It was very good, but what he did was, he told stories about different coasties, as he called them, who gave their life actually from the founding of this country on up to Vietnam. And a lot of people don't know that the Coast Guard had served in all these battles. People think they just basically, sit off the coast or they hang out in the Mississippi River. The reality is they're deployed very much so in part of our military. So what I thought I would do was share with you a personal story that was given to me about a young man named Danny Rodriguez. When Pearl Harbor went down, my father was living in LA at the time, and his best friend was Danny, and they said, you know what, we're gonna go fight. So they're 17-year-olds, little Tom, Ramon, Chavez, and Danny Rodriguez. They go down and they enlist in the Marine Corps. They go down to MCRD, then up to Pendleton, and they join the 2nd Marine Division to go to war. Now there was a battle called the Battle of Tarawa in 1943, and we have a number of celebrated battles in World War II, but what was interesting about Tarawa was the whole idea of island hopping, taking away the ability of the Japanese to have air control of the Pacific, could only be achieved if you took away their airfields. So the Navy and the Marine Corps decided that they were going to take away these airfields. And along the way, we had this new thing called an Amtrak, or how we would use them to go from the sea to the shore. And how would we do it in a correct manner? Now later on in the battles, we learned a lot in Tarawa. One of the things interesting about Tarawa, they had all these reefs off the shores of Tarawa. And my father told me about the time that he was coming in and they'd hit these reefs and they get shot out and they get blown out and they're in the water and they'd have to come back in again and another boat would pick them up and they'd try to get in again and they get blown up. My father went through 3 different crafts before he finally got in. But it was between the 2nd and 3rd craft that Danny and him had made a pact. They said, we will be together all through this. You take care of me and I will take care of you. Between the 2nd and 3rd one, they had these, we call them K-pots. It was like a life preserver that was very bulky and big. And he was going, and he said he remembers looking at Danny, and after the turn time to blow around, he goes, TR, that's what he used to call my father. TR, he goes, how am I doing? My father looked at him and he says, we're good, we just got to go to the other boat, go to the other boat. And they're screaming and yelling, you can imagine the water's all red. And then he saw Danny flip upside down, and Danny had no legs. And the blood was just gushing. And Danny died there. That happened in 1943. My father told me that story in 1993 when I was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps in Okinawa, Japan. For 50 years, he never shared that story. You know, my time, my 3 decades in the military, I can tell you that people who've gone through this, the ones who survive often bear the brunt of that. He bore that. I tell that story not so much for my father, but for all of you, the World War II and Korean veterans. I'm sure you have similar stories. But also for Danny, because he was one of the million that died for this country. So when you think about what is Memorial Day about, it's about those who are sacrificed. And they're not just the ones who have died, but as many of them have lived with those horrors. And I can tell you, reflecting back on my father's life and the things he did, he never left the beach of Tarawa. This is a great day to talk about those who have given. I'd ask you to do that. Remember, this is a great country only because we have a great military and the young men and women who are willing to fight for this country. Thank you very much.
Assemblyman and United States Marine Corps veteran Rocky Chavez.